Hi, I'm Cameron McKenzie, and I want to take you through some of the steps of just creating a web project here in Rational Application Developer. So I've got my taxation data project, and I got all these DAOs and persistence components, and it'd be nice to actually use some of these components to actually connect to the database through a web-based front end. So the first thing I'm going to do is come in here. I'm in the web perspective, and I'm going to create a dynamic web project. I'm going to shift the version number down to 2.5 just because I don't think my target deployment environment supports 3.0. The environment supports 3.0 development, might not support 3.0 deployment. So I'm keeping with 2.5. Should be fine. Allows us to do annotation-based servlets anyway, so that's great. And I'll call this project Taxation Web. The other thing I'm going to make sure it's part of the taxation ear. Don't let this create a new ear file for you. That is not what you need. So I believe I could accept all of the different defaults here. Context root is Taxation Web. And so I've got this, and now I want to create a little web page. And so I'm going to create a new web page. This is a JSP page. I don't think there's any JSP page creation wizards. Basically, it's a web page wizard. It's just called index.jsp. I'm going to ignore all of these different sort of things I can add in right off the bat, although they are moderately interesting. Click Finish, and my index.jsp begins. Now, what I actually want to do is I'm going to cheat a little bit here. I'm going to import in the index.jsp page that I want. And so the idea on this page is that I'm going to have a little form that says, hey, type in your income. And when you click Submit Query, it sends that information to the server, and then the server sends a response back that says taxes owed. Now this looks like it's all in one box here, and it looks like it would display like this. It won't. This first section will only display if the income hasn't been calculated. This section will only display if the income has been calculated. This Start Over button is only available if this section is here. If you click the Start button, it removes this look and takes you up to the top here. Might be a little bit more interesting if you can see the code. So basically, here's just the header part. The key that we're really interested in is the form. It's going to call the taxation servlet. That's going to be our controller where the bulk of the work is done. It's not created yet, so we get a little error message here. And then I say, you know what, someone's going to tell us what the taxes owed are, and they're going to put that in the request object. So if somebody tells us what the taxes are, what we want to do is we want to display what their taxes are. Okay? So if we don't know what their taxes are, if it's null, we're going to ask them for what their income is. And so here, if the taxes is null, if we don't know what their taxes owed is, we will display them the income field and associated text box with the submit button. Otherwise, this little JSP scriptlet there. Otherwise, we will display the taxes that they owe, which is a variable that's going to be placed into the request scope with a name, all lowercase letter taxes. So that's how that code looks. This is pretty important because we're going to see this in the servlet that we create. So I'm going to click Control S, and then I'm going to create a new. I clicked on the wrong project there. Gotta be careful. I'm going to create a new servlet. It's going to be called the taxation servlet. I think I can accept all of the different defaults here. Now I'm only going to have a do-get method, so I can eliminate the do-post. And my code will get added here. Now I'm actually going to go in here and do just a little bit of edits here. And what am I going to do in this code? A few little things. So first of all, I'm going to get their income. So I say request.getParameter income. Income is the name of the input field here, right there, input field income. So whatever they've typed in, I will get when the servlet runs, so I hold that as a string. Then I need help with the tax calculator, so I get my flat tax calculator out. And I say, hey, tc.calculate taxes. I pass in this string, but convert it to a long, and this gives me my taxes owing. I then take this taxes owing and put it in the request as an attribute under the name with the link taxes. That way the JSP page can say, hey, request a get attribute taxes, and that tells the web page what the taxes are if there are any taxes that have been delivered. And when I'm done, we send the person back to the index.jsp page. That's the page that we created. The only difference is this value is not null, which means this section will get executed. It's a neat little razzle dazzle. Now, something else that I've done here is I've also accessed the Entity Manager. I'm using the Entity Manager here. I am creating a tax return POJO, so I'm setting the ID, just using a random number generator, setting the income, setting the taxes owing, beginning a transaction, persisting it, and then committing the transaction. So I'm actually using JPA here to persist the data. Now, one of the things you'll also notice is that it's saying, hey, it doesn't like the fact that the tax calculator cannot be resolved. And that's because I need to, well, first of all, add the taxation data and taxation jar file for deployment. So do taxation and taxation data. So those are both going to be packaged in WebINF lib for deployment. Okay, now that's one part of the equation. The other part of the equation is making sure that taxation and taxation data are on the build or on the Java build path when I'm doing development. Now I do that if I click Control-Shift-O. My imports are organized and all my errors go away. Life is grand. Now what else do I need to do? One thing you might want to make sure of is in the persistence.xml file, ensure that the property OpenJPA dynamic enhancement agent value equals true is added in there. That's in the JPA project. Okay. We need that in there in order for the JPA enhancements to happen on the entity bean when we do our deployment. Okay, I'm trying to figure out what I've missed here. There's always a step that I miss when I go through these. It's just so easy to do, but otherwise all of this looks good. I'm going to head into my JPA perspective and look at that. I've got some data here, and I got a connection. I got to disconnect from that database in order for the application to run. That's just because that database is only allowed one connection. And when the server starts using JPA, it needs a connection and it holds on to it. So I just have to go run as, run on server, and let's see what happens here. Web server's going to start. That always takes just a moment. Now the window comes up. I'm going to just clear the console. Only that way the errors that come up might be mine. I'm going to put an income of $333,000, $333,001. Now let's see what happens when I submit the query. Things look good. Looks like it did some JPA there. Says, do you want to start over? I'll say, sure, start over. Now I could potentially add more data in here. But what I really want to do is I want to actually check this database and see if that 333,000 went in there. So I have to actually stop the server. Again, Derby's only allowed one connection. Again, that persistence.xml file, it's right there. Taxation data source, MEDINF, table DLL. Make sure you got that true, dynamic enhancement true in there. That allows us to get rid of having to say that use the Java agent, which we use when we're running a standalone application. Now I can connect to the Derby database. Go down to the classic model schema, right, open tables, right click on tax return, and look at that. There is my tax return with the $333,000 income, and then the taxes owing persisted in. And there you go. That's how you actually get your applications to run in web browser, and that's how you use servlets and JSPs, and potentially even take advantage of JPA in your servlets. Let's just take a look at that servlet one more time. And there it is right there. Anyways, that's it for now. Hopefully you learned a thing or two about developing servlets and JSPs, and until the next lab, happy Java programming.